How does a mother of four manage three thriving brands, design purses, coach other moms, and still find time to farm in the Midwest? Today, on the Founders Podcast, we have Rebekah Scott, a true multi passionate entrepreneur who is not only the mastermind behind a handmade purse empire, but also a life coach who helps moms create harmony between business and family. If you're tired of the hustle and want to learn the systems that keep your business thriving, you won't want to miss this episode. Welcome to another episode of Founders Podcast. I'm your host, Ash, and this is a show where I interview proven founders and industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you build, launch, and grow your business. So I hope you enjoy the show. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
Great. Do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires or motivates you that you would like to share with our audience?
Yes, I have this sign in my house and it's in the middle of my house, so all of my kids read it and anybody who comes in. And it's by Babe Ruth, and it's hard to beat a person who never gives up.
Oh, great. That's nice. And just for our audience, would you be able to elaborate you do every time you read it? Like what's the magic behind?
I just think it's so true. It's one of my core values for my family that my husband and I set up is perseverance. And so you need perseverance in
Mhm,
everything. And that just means not quitting. It doesn't mean like not quitting ever. It just means that if you put
mhm.
your best foot forward, you have to keep putting the next best foot, even if it changes directions, which that naturally happens. But you'll never give up on the overarching picture of trying to make it, if you will.
That's so true, and I can relate to
Mhm.
that too.
Yeah.
In Founders Life, we have so many ups and downs, but what matters
Mhm.
is how you overcome your downs and then keep going, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it's how you frame up the downs. They're like, okay, well, that was a learning experience that was perhaps very expensive or very time
Yeah.
consuming, but you have the power to decide how you're going to learn it. Like, are you just going to like just burn out and decide like, okay, that was the worst decision ever? Or are you going to be like, okay, I learned this and I gathered this and now I'm going to move in this direction?
Indeed, indeed. Great.
Hmm.
So let's talk
Hmm.
about the story. How does the brand? So tell us about this Rebecca Scott brand. What is this actual product? Who is it
Sure.
for? And what was the main problem you were trying to solve?
Okay. Well, I make purses and accessories right here in the Midwest. So I have a team of 20 helping me sew them. I'm one of my own seamstresses. I just love it, you guys. So you just can't take it away from me. So that frames up what
Hmm.
we were doing. We were poor newlyweds, and I've been sewing since the age of 4. My mom was a big seamstress, and I love creating. And I didn't know what we would do for Christmas gifts, but I love a purse, and I think you can have a really boring outfit on, but if you have a great purse, people are still like, oh, I see that, right? And everybody relates to this, especially if you're a woman. And so I made some purses for the Christmas gift. And then I
Hmm.
started getting orders, and I thought, oh, this could be fun. And I was the kid that was selling stuff on the playground that I made. Like I was selling mittens and hats. And so I've always had the entrepreneur bug in me, anyways. So right away, as soon as orders were being placed, I was doing the math really quick about, I was doing the math for time and I was doing the math for effort and enjoyment. Like, did I actually enjoy this? And I was doing the
Hmm.
math for how long could it be until we could have kiddos and I could stay home with them. And so I set to just building and making as many purses as I could, doing as many samples and figuring out patterns and copyrights and trademarks and all this stuff to try to figure it out. And I quit my job in radio. And the very first day I quit my job, I I stayed up until 2 in the morning sewing, and then I got up at 4 a.m. and started sewing again. I just couldn't wait to have
Oh
control of my
my.
own time. And so like it's in me so deep. That's why we're still going, you guys, because I just love creating. So that's the beginning part of the purse business.
Awesome, awesome. And you
Yeah.
mentioned that you created it for Christmas. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. Made them for Christmas gifts. Yeah. I
Uh,
happened to have fabric at that time, but one of the funny stories, and this is very relatable to founders, is like I quit a year too early. Like I did not do the math correct on how much the cost of the purse would be versus like buying some marketing and some other things. I was just quick, like, ooh, this could equal my paychecks. I'm quitting, right? But one
mhm.
of the stories was I had zero money to buy more fabric, but I needed some more samples of what I was doing to take to a show. That's like
Yeah.
a craft show or a market. So I was pacing around my living room trying to figure out how I was going to make some more purses, and I noticed that my curtains were super cute. So I
Mhm.
climbed up on a stool, cut down my curtains, put those into purses, and then went and sold those.
Great, great. And I can imagine how you must be feeling after leaving your job and coming
Oh
back
yeah,
home and then just sewing for like whole night and then again, because
yeah.
that like if you're passionate about it, you do whatever you could, right?
Yes, yes. And I still as a kid, like I had that kind of underdog spirit where everyone
Uh-huh.
was telling me like, why aren't you using your degree? And like that's a stable job. And so I was like, you watch this, you watch this. I've been doing this since I was 10. I was selling stuff on the playground. So there was
Mm.
a part of me that was like, I'm gonna prove everybody wrong that I can make a handcrafted purse and sell it for a good price and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So tell me, which year was it when you started, and after how many days, or let's say weeks, or
Uh-huh.
I want to hear days, you got your first
Okay.
order?
Um, I let's see. So I started it in July of '04, and so we're celebrating 20 years. I started in July of '04, and my first sale was 6 months before that when a friend ordered.
Okay.
Um, but the sales were I've changed my model so many times as we understand too. Like I had a general idea of my business model, but I've
Uh-huh.
changed it over the years just with time. And so back then I didn't have a website yet. I would just go to every show that I could afford, like a $30 table, and I would just sell it there. And my goals in the beginning were so simple. It wasn't like even selling a purse, it was handing out so many business cards to get just awareness out there. Cause I realized at the time, like, yes, I want them to buy a purse, but if they're not going to buy a purse, then I'm going to be personal and give them this card. And I
Mhm.
didn't have a place to send them. I didn't even have a website to send them to. I just had my phone number on there.
Mhm.
So then I realized, like, wait, where am I sending them to? And that's when I started, like, okay, we got to get a website.
Yeah, yeah. And this is very classical example of testing the waters in
Yeah.
founders world. You mentioned that you
Hmm.
got your first order 6 months before. That means you've been talking about it with your friends, or you've been putting these small ideas here and there wherever you're going, that
Hmm.
okay, you're interested in creating this purses and everything. They must have
Hmm.
seen some kind of different qualities in your
Hmm.
precision, or maybe your design, or maybe your fashion sense,
Yes.
that they wanted, or the person who ordered it 6 months before
Hmm.
was like, okay, no, Rebecca can do a better job. What was that
Yes.
part? I'm
So
eager to hear.
this is such a great question because when I started out, I designed the purse. I picked out the fabric, the leather, the zippers, everything, right? But when I would go to sell it, they would be like, "Oh, this is adorable. It has pockets." And a lot of purses at the time were just dump zones. So they liked that it was organized and that it had fun fabrics and that sort of thing. But what they started saying is, "Oh my gosh, I love this bag, but could I have it with a teal zipper instead of marigold?" And at first, I was like, why? I've already made it like this, I did it like this. And then I started realizing the next customer would say the same thing. And the next customer would say the same thing. So I could have chose to be offended, or I could have chose to say, well, I'm going to answer what the question what the customer is saying. They wanted to create their own. They wanted to custom make a purse. So as soon as I could click it off from being offended to like, hey, they're telling me what they want, I can deliver that. Then I
Mhm.
started letting them place custom orders, and that's when things really took off when I allowed
Mm.
the woman to create the exact purse that she wanted.
Mm. Because custom designing is a big, big business. It
Yeah,
actually
yes.
is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We were doing
I
it long before Nike was telling you how to put all the elements in. I was like telling my children, I'm like, I literally had this website before Nike. Like you could pick out all the features.
That's so amazing, isn't it? I have
Yeah.
interviewed a person who created this custom
Mm,
branded, these
yeah.
cups and ties and shirts and
Oh.
everything. So he
Hmm.
started
Hmm.
with small, and then he started doing it online, and then he
Hmm.
became so big that his company got acquired for 30 million by a Singapore
Wow.
VC.
Wow.
And
Hmm.
when I was interviewing this person, you know what he said? He
What?
started just with just himself. He brought the cups from like a local store, and he used to stick stickers on them, those
Yep.
tattoos which stick on the cups, I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And that's how it started. So I was so amazed that how many
Yep.
people are looking for this custom build design.
Yeah.
so so
Yeah.
so you pivoted from designing your purse with
Hmm.
your style
Hmm.
to something which caters to custom design for
Hmm.
individuals. And
Yeah.
that's where it's what happened next?
Well, I started thinking, okay, if I'm going to custom make this, then I have to also figure out how to scale it. So, like, am I only going to do custom or am I still going to do my own designs? So, what I started doing
Mhm.
is just providing more parameters around it. So, I would still design the actual purse, but they would pick out the elements. So, they would pick out the fabric, the zipper, and the features. And then it got to a phase where I was like, I'm going to need to hire. So I hired my mom, which everyone hires their mom first. Or at least I did because she's the one that taught me how to sew. So I hired my mom. And then I got a couple other seamstresses so that I could keep having kiddos because we have a lot of kiddos here. And so started that and then started sales reps because I thought I need help with sales because I'm going to keep sewing. So I
Mhm.
chose sewing because I knew that was one of my strengths and I hired sales. Well, what I learned early on is like nobody sells it as well as I do because I just knew so much about it. So even though they were well-meaning people, it was like my twin sister and a college roommate, they still couldn't quite get the sales that I needed because I also wasn't giving them a solid enough sales script. How did I sell the bags? So then I started legitimizing the business a little bit more. I started an operations manual like, here's how we sew the purse, here's the instructions for it, here's how we sell the purse, here's what we say about the purse, here's the follow through to the customer. And when I started doing like basically the legitimizing of the business and treating it like, okay, how are we going to scale this? What would that look like? That's when things started snowballing, if you will, because I could say, oh, you have a question about that? Here's the answer, whether it was written in my operations manual or I didn't have it written down so they could follow a template, then I knew I had to write it down. So that's how it
Mm.
started progressing from there. And then I worked to about a team of 20 and I kept it very loose as far as where the revenue would come in. So I continued to do the shows because that's where people get to touch and feel the purse, which is kind of important in the purse world, believe it or not, or see the size. There's always a big question about the size of the purse. So I
Yeah.
kept doing the shows around the Midwest. And then I got a website that works and functions beautifully where they could create it so they could click on it. And a
Mm.
lot of our sales actually come from them seeing me at a show and then going to the website and playing around with it. But like they wanted to see, touch, and feel like it just because it says handcrafted, is it like the crappy version of handcrafted or is it like the really nice version? So when they could see and I could prove like, oh no, these are beautifully made, then they would go
Mhm.
to the website and start ordering that way.
Awesome. And so you just mentioned that you created some SOPs, standard operating procedures for your colleagues, and that's a very good
Hmm.
point because at one point in your business you have to do it because you cannot
Yeah.
clone yourself, isn't it?
Correct.
That's
Correct. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So when you, so I think I'm guessing that it's a very competitive space,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So when you had this epiphany, did you look into the market? Were there other products?
Mm-hmm.
What was going on that time? And what did you see from your research that
Yeah.
encouraged you to move forward?
Well, still to this day, I am obsessive of people watching and how people are wearing their purses and what the latest trends in and why they're wearing like that. One thing that I noticed how I differentiated myself is we are handcrafted. So I could say like I'm sewing it. Like the women I employ are right here in the US. They're right
Yeah.
here. And I noticed that people would either choose a name brand purse that was probably very expensive and looked really cool and it was very noticeable, like they knew that was the name brand purse, but the inside of it was just like a dump zone. So while they
Mm,
felt confident that they're like, I'm carrying the name brand purse, when they went to get something out of it, they're like, I can't find anything. So then it messed with like, oh, I feel disorganized, but yet I don't because I have this bag. Or it was the
mm,
reverse of that. They were like, fine, I'm going to buy an organized bag, a black nylon bag, but it looks atrocious and doesn't say anything about the woman's personality or opinion. So I
mm,
set out, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do both. I'm going to create a high end because our price points are great, high end designer purse, a designer from the Midwest, but it's also going to be really well organized. And the best part about me differentiating myself is like, I don't even care if they say it's a Rebekah Scott bag. I want them to say, I created this, I
Mm.
custom made this. And when they would say that, you take two women in a Target line and they're checking out, and the one woman says to her, "Oh, I like your bag." She throws her shoulders back. She says, "Thanks, I made it." And she's like,
Yeah.
"What, really?" And she's like, "Yes, I went to the Rebecca Scott Designs website and I custom made it." There's an exchange of confidence and an exchange of like compliments there that I love. And I've actually got to see it happen. And they
Mm.
didn't even know I was standing there. So it's really fun for the woman to say, I created something.
Mm.
Hmm.
Interesting. And that is something which a startup brings into the crowded marketplace. We have this saying of a like a red ocean and blue ocean, right? So I
Yes.
think you were in like sort of like a red ocean place, but you figured out your USP, if I may,
Hmm.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Interesting. So now fast forward from 2004 to 2020, 2022, 2024, I guess. You
Hmm.
have grown your team. I guess you got 8 or 10 people working with you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So would you be able to give us a sense of size of the business? You don't have to share
Yes.
any revenue or numbers,
Sure.
just,
Sure.
number of team members, how many purses you have
Yeah.
sold, things like that.
Yeah. Well, we've grown the team to 20 members. About
Mhm.
three of them are actual employees. The rest are all contractors because they all work in their own homes and they
Mhm.
sew a part of the purse and then they bring it back for me to finish it. So, like I said, I'm still one of my own contractors. And
Mhm.
my employees are people that help move the ball forward outside of like sewing it. So, a marketer, an SEO gal, my accountant, my assistant,
Mm.
who is unbelievable. So, those positions I need so that I can stay in my creative genius, which, is what is the most expensive part of the business, is me still staying creative and joyful about it. And then they help me work through the details. So I just
Mm.
grew, when I started spending too much time on the taxes, I was like, okay, the next position to hire is an accountant. So we got that. And then of course you've got to get legitimized too, where they're like, okay, we got to make sure what part of the business is this and this. And so that helped me like, okay, scale it from there and know what I could do. And then the assistant was, I just needed somebody to keep ordering the supplies. I knew what I wanted to order, but to take the time to find the websites and all of that, I got her involved to start doing those pieces. And then
Mhm.
understanding where her skill set was is I like the details of creating and I want to stay behind the cutting table is what we call it, the kind of where I cut the bags and I get to see them. If I'm not staying behind the cutting table, the business is not growing. So there's only so
Mm.
much time I can spend at the computer before I'm depleted and I'm not creating the next big idea or the next big thing. And so she helps me stay behind the cutting table.
Awesome. That's really good. And
Yeah.
when did you started the online store again? Sorry.
Yes. We started the online store in '06.
2006. Okay, great stuff.
Mhm.
So that's good then. So you mentioned something which I'm very interested in. You
Okay.
mentioned you have an SEO girl. Talk to me about that.
It cut out right there. You said I mentioned what again?
You have somebody who looks after your SEO.
Yes. Yes. Actually, my SEO, I have not started until like the last 5 years. And I know everybody's like, what? I did for a while, but then
Mhm.
I just chose to spend the advertising dollars on Facebook ads and that sort of thing. But we have just recently started back up with SEO, and I'm realizing the mistakes of my ways. But it's so hard to keep deciding like which one am I going to fund right now to keep things moving forward.
How much do you think you benefited from these Facebook or online advertisement
Oh man.
versus SEO?
I don't know that I could put a number to it yet because of a unique situation. We got
Mm.
hacked for 15 months. We got hacked
What?
and it delayed us for 15. Yes, you guys, it was death. And we are still crawling back. So, in light of being totally transparent, we are still building back and deciding. I mean, at the time, I didn't know how big of a deal it was until now we're still sorting through it. And they caused so much damage on our back end. And they actually hacked into my ad account. So, everybody, you have to have the two-step authentication and just make sure you're really watching it. But they hacked into that part and they ran their own ad using my ad account. And so, Facebook thought I was spammy and they thought I owed them a bunch of money, but it wasn't my money to owe them. It was the hackers. So it took
Mm.
15 months to recover our accounts. It was awful. And so now that I'm building back and going, okay, well, how do we do this? We started running ads again because we finally got out of Facebook jail. And I said, we've got to increase our SEO so people can find us.
What sort of ad they were running on your account? Was it?
Oh, thankfully it was some like fairy wand something. It wasn't something obscene, but they ran it in like a 3-day span and they just like
Mm.
ran it every 5 minutes or whatever. So Facebook thought I was spammy and they also thought I owed them money. So they didn't let anybody see my stuff. That's why I had the huge decrease in viewers.
Mm. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Mhm.
Cool.
Mhm.
So started building, opened the online store. How
Yeah.
does the online store helps? Because I want to go into the next part of the interview where I want to learn more about how you train other moms, right? But before
Oh,
we
sure.
goes into that, I want to know
Mhm.
how does this
Mhm.
online store helps people to order their customized purse, and what are the things you guys have to do in the back end? And the third part of the question is how do you how do you manage the expectation for the customer, because custom
Mhm.
built things have some kind of expectations, right? Time
Yeah.
of delivery, quality, things like that.
Yes. Yep. Yep. So when we started building the website, we wanted to make sure that it had a custom feature where we provided the guardrails, is what we call them. So there's 20 different styles. There might be even 25 now. And then we provided the fabrics and the linings and the zippers. So we had the guardrails of what went good together. And then we also put stickers on them that says suggested. So that if they are afraid to create, we can say, no, this is what Becca suggests the lining be with this fabric that you've picked out. And so then they had a really good custom experience because along the way, we're providing guardrails of what we like. And then once the order is placed, we also reach out to them, sometimes personally from me, like as I'm cutting it out, I'll reach back and say, hey, do you actually want this zipper with this lining? And I'll take a picture and send it to them. So we are as small batch and as custom and as customer centric as you get because they'll just get an email or a text message from me that says, let's make sure and go through here. So we're very, like I said, very customer based. And so they can trust that all the way through their ordering process. And then, of course, we have funnels set up that say, okay, right now it's being sewn up. And then once the purse is sent, it sends them an email that says, the purse is in the mail. Here are the care instructions, here to take care of it. And here's our guarantee. If anything happens to the purse, I personally fix it. So we take care of the customer that way with that process. But
Mm-hmm.
the reason we wanted the website, I think one of your questions was like, why the website? Well, of course, now everybody needs a website, but it's also so that when I go to the shows, I have a place for them to go to if they don't place the order at the show.
Mm.
Mhm.
So a couple of things which I've noted down is you provide very good customer support
Yes.
with suggestions and everything, but
Mhm.
also you provide a guarantee to your customers, and
Yes.
these two things are quite big to provide at the first place, anyways. But
Yep.
you guys do that, so that's great. Cool.
Absolutely.
Uh, how many purses you have sold till date?
Oh gosh, 20 years of business. Oh man. We sew about 40 to 50 a week on average. And some of those are for the website, the just ones that we call them stock, and some are
Yeah.
orders. So somewhere in there, whoever wants to do the math live, go ahead. That's
Oh my
how
god,
many we're sewing.
20 years.
Yeah.
Oh my god, 52 weeks every, so let's say 50 weeks, 40 each, 5 or 20. Oh my god, 200, 2000, 2020. Oh, somewhere around 40. Oh
Wow.
no, 40,000, something like
Okay.
that. That
That seems
sounds,
about right.
yeah.
My hands will tell you that.
Cool stuff. Cool stuff. Awesome.
Yeah.
Now let's move to the next part of the interview then, Rebecca. So
Okay.
you being a mom, running the business, obviously it's difficult, with kids
Mhm.
and everything. Um, you also mentioned that you started doing uh, coaching for the moms who wanted to get into the entrepreneur space,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
How did that started,
Mhm.
and why
Well,
did it started actually? You know.
I have a
So,
very distinct story of how it got started.
mhm,
I was in business for about 6 to 8 years at that point. So I had the systems in place and I
mhm,
had 4 kids. They were all under the age of probably 10 at that time.
mhm,
And I pulled into a grocery store parking lot with my kiddos. It was about 9 in the morning. Everybody's
mhm,
ready for the day because we had systems in place because I wanted to scale a handcrafted business. So I couldn't just be willy-nilly about raising my kiddos and raising this business, if you will. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I rolled into the parking lot, I had a seamstress meet me there because she needed to take her load for the next week to sew at home. And when
Mm-hmm.
she arrived, she wasn't really ready for the day. The kids were still in their jammies. She looked at my kids who were like looked like little ducks in a row. And stay with me, the story does not. I'm not bragging, but she said, "How in the world are you doing this?" She's like, "We're doing
Mm-hmm.
the same thing. I was getting ready and going home to sew. She was getting ready and going home to sew." And she's like, "Why is there such a difference here?" And I said, "Oh gosh, don't worry about it. We have days like that
Mm-hmm.
too." But I immediately felt a punch in my gut because the truth was I was being falsely humble. I did have a plan. I knew how to do this. And my thought and prayer on the way home was like, God, how do I teach her who was living the pretty much the same as me, wanted to raise kids and sew, everything that I knew. And I had some radio background. So I thought, well, I'll just jump on a podcast and tell everybody
Mm-hmm.
how I'm doing it. And also when I
Mm-hmm.
was at the shows, I'd be set up and I'd have 200 purses there, 200 accessories. We had all the marketing and they're going, how are you doing this? They could see my signs that said I had 4 kids and we farm and ranch. And they were like, how are you doing this? And so that question of how, I couldn't answer in the 2 to 3 minutes when I wanted them to buy a purse. So I was like, I'm going to start recording podcasts to tell them how I'm doing it. I just started teaching on systems. And that's how my encourager brand started and my coaching brand started. And it was just teaching women. I think there's 5 systems we operate in. I think we have a me system, how we take care of ourselves, how we get a
Mm-hmm.
full cup, 100% charge. There's a food system, answering the question, what's for supper? We have to do that a lot, right? There's a home system, like how are you creating a sanctuary? How you cleaning? How you doing laundry? There's a family system, like what are the values you want for your family? And then there's a work system, the who, what, when, where, and why of what we're doing. And I think when I started defining these are the 5 pillars I live within, then I would be able to zoom out in moments and go, something, we're really chaotic right now. Which one of these is like just screaming? And it might just be that the food system is taking up too much mental bandwidth and I can't sew that week because I'm constantly thinking about supper. So I need to plan ahead for the supper so I'm not thinking about those and I can go back to being creative or vice versa. But those systems developed uh, early on when I was starting the purses just by myself. And then I'd gotten them pretty smooth. By the time that seamstress showed up, she was like, how are you doing this? And then I was
Mm-hmm.
able to explain it to her.
Awesome, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned about these key system. Can you share your 5 key system for like a thriving or a mompreneur or a businesswoman, if that's all
Yes.
right?
Yes, of course. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, like we just said, so if you have a me system and that's just asking yourself, like, what gives me a full charge? And everybody's going to look different. So don't follow your friends because yours might be a run, yours might be a nap, it might be a day with a girlfriend, but it's really thinking of like, how are you going to get a full charge and what does that mean for you personally? And then it's addressing your food system. So
Sorry,
answering the,
if we
go
go
ahead.
back, the
Yes,
first one you said have a meat. Is that have a meat system?
a me, M-E, a me
Oh,
system.
have a
Like that's
meat. Okay.
concentrated on me.
Got
Yeah.
it. Cool.
Yes.
Got it.
Have a me system. So it's how you're taking care of yourself because sometimes we
Mhm.
put that on the back burner and we can't do
Yeah.
that, right? And then there's food, answering the question, what's for supper? Because
Hmm.
I think food takes up a ton of mental bandwidth and some of us love it and some of us don't. But it is like we got to feed ourselves, right? And we got to feed our
Yeah.
families. So take care of that. And then there's a home system. And that's like your home should be a sanctuary. You shouldn't dread trying to come home. And
Yeah.
especially if you're working from home, which I was doing, I had to create a rock solid home system so that my brain could remain in both work and home while I was doing them together. But I wouldn't be stressed about when laundry was going to be done because I already had a plan of when it would be done. Okay.
Hmm.
And then there's a family system, and that's just living out your priorities. So picking top values for your family, just like you pick top values for your brand. We talked about my top values were quality and customer service. Every single day, those are the 2 top qualities for my brand. Well, I picked top qualities for my family, and that's being kind, humble, and honest. And so everything that we do and everything that people say behind us our backs is we're hoping they're saying the Scots are kind, humble, and honest. So operating a family system and what it is that you want to prioritize. And then,
Hmm.
of course, your work system. So answering who's going to help you, when are you going to work, what are you working on, what are the systems in place for your work, what teammates do you need to help me? And when you answer those questions for work, then you can see like, okay, I've got a plan here. And I think most women and men have these 5 systems, whether you're married or not, or whether you have kids or not. These 5 pillars, all of us have these.
Mm, definitely, definitely. And I couldn't agree more with you about what's for supper. That's the
Yes,
question we
it's
struggle
so
every day.
true, right? All day, all day. We say it at 9, we say it at noon, we say it at 4, and we say it at 6 when we're making a phone call for takeout, right? We ask that question all day long. Yeah.
And I want to touch the base on that. You said, I think you often talk about like less hustle and more joy, right? Can you explain that,
Yes.
what that looks like in
Yes.
practice?
Well, I think there's a lot of messaging, especially for startups, founders, even those who are just still in 5 years of business. It's like you just got to hustle harder. Oh, you're not
Mm,
making it. You just need to hustle harder. And I could
mm,
not hustle any harder. I have the 4 kiddos, so was like, nope, I'm not going to do that. But if I create a system that I can go to and then I can keep tweaking until it works really well, which by the way, you will always keep tweaking them because stages and roles change. But if I had something in place, then I'm not thinking like I have to survive on less sleep or work harder because I've
mhm,
already worked out the work system about when I will, and when I won't work. And so when we remove that like hustle feeling and mentality, then we pursue the things that really matter. The rest will fall into place when you pursue the things that matter within those systems. And it's a lot less hustle.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm,
definitely.
mhm,
How do you approach decision making? Because when you're
mm,
managing both your business and the family responsibility,
mhm.
it's get quite cumbersome, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I call it the art of the pre-decision. So this goes back to those systems again, you guys, is like pre-decide what are we having for supper tonight. I make all my food decisions by 7 a.m. That's for me.
Mhm.
When I coach, I always say make your food decisions by 9 a.m. And so that doesn't mean you have to have a month worth of plans. I'm not saying
Mm,
that. I'm just saying for that day, make the decisions about what you're going to eat, even if the decision is takeout. I don't care. Make the decision so that throughout the day, you're not fatigued by continually answering the question, what's for supper, right? You already did the
mm,
pre decision, like, this is what we're having. It's the same thing for the pre decision for laundry. What day are you going to do your laundry? If you do your laundry every day, fine, then make that decision. But the pre decision is this is how we do it right now.
mm.
So that decision making for me is way less hustled and way less frequent because I've already pre decided this is how we do this thing.
When you say pre-decision, I want to, because I want to learn this, how you can take this very, very lightly. What's for supper? How do you decide for something before you encounter it? For example, okay,
Okay.
you can decide what you want to eat tonight. That's
Mm-hmm.
fine, but there
Mm-hmm.
must be some bigger, challenging decisions you have to decide, right?
Okay. Give me an example of other pre decisions that you would have to decide.
So let's say, for example, if you want to increase or
Mm-hmm.
hire two more people to help you
Okay.
out with,
Yes.
back end things, suing and everything, how do you
Okay.
make the pre-decision for that?
Well, I kind of decide why, answering the who, what, when, where, and why of the work system. So, okay, who? I think I need another seamstress. Why do
Hmm.
I need another seamstress? Well, because I find myself using about an extra 3 to 4 hours a week in work and I just don't have it right now. Okay, so I've decided those 2 things. And then I'm like, well, how many would they be sewing a week? So and
Hmm.
just getting more detailed about why are you making this decision? And then trying to look back to see if I've ever made this decision before. Okay, I've hired somebody before. What was going on then that I needed to hire that person? How did that go? Do I have the paperwork of how I reached out to them? Have I met this person before? So then I can look back on some of my SOPs and go, okay, well, first of all, I got to post about it. So that's already a decision. And looking at this SOP tells me, like, okay, we post about it, then we interview. And am I involved in the interviews or just my team involved in the interviews? Then we have a studio visit where they come and visit me so I can get to know them. Then we do the training and then we sign the papers if it's the right thing. So the decisions roll out after I sit with, okay, this is a work system question. And do I have an example of have I done this before? And if I don't have an example, then I start researching who has done this before and give them a call, probably while I'm sewing. But
Mm.
those are some of those decisions that I can pre decide wait, have I done this before? And kind of work that out before I start moving forward with it.
So basically you split that decision into small chunks of small
Yes.
pieces of decisions, and then figure out which one you have already taken before, and then
Yep.
separate them, and which one you have to take now, just focus on them, and that will
Mhm.
saves you the energy. That's a
Mhm.
very good process, actually.
Mhm.
Ah,
And here's
interesting.
an example too, Ash. If you have not, like, if I'm hiring a position I've never hired before, then I
Hmm.
need to have transparency with the hire. Like, we're both on probation right now. I don't know if this is going to work. So we're going to do 90 days of me seeing if it works and 90 days of you seeing if it works together so that there's just transparency of like, this is new to both of us. So here's how we're going to move forward.
Indeed, indeed. Great stuff. Cool. So I want to show you something which I'm very embarrassed about. I do
Okay.
it with, yeah, I do it with all of my guests. I try to note down all the nuggets which I learn from
Yes.
every coach, every interview I do. So what I've learned today, and potentially this is something the listeners from our podcast could learn too,
Okay.
is you need when you're starting something, you need to have a passion for it, because if you
Oh, yes.
don't, you will run out of that enthusiasm, or the
Yeah.
motivation you had for a while, and then you will give up. And the most important thing for an entrepreneur to keep going is
Mhm.
that kind of passion, right? So that's
Mhm.
something which I try to draw here back
Yes.
in
Yes. I
2000 when
love
you
it.
started. And
Mhm.
then again, you need to have proper systems in place, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so before even going to system, you need to have sort of like an USP in your market. For example, in your case, you gave customers a very close knitted support system for to
Mhm.
talk to you directly, potentially. And then
Yeah.
one of your USP was guarantee, which is not
Mhm.
everybody give in this space, isn't it? So
Right.
that was like your USP, and that's why your
Mhm.
business sort of like ramped up from that point of time.
Yes.
But you didn't stop there. You also went to a lot of shows, and then learn from your customer by interviewing
Yep.
them, and then
Mhm.
listening to them and understanding them. And that's
Mhm.
where the custom building of the person came across.
Yeah.
Now, when what I've also learned about these pointers which you mentioned here,
Mhm.
so have a me system is potentially something similar to, like, if you don't love yourself, nobody will love
Mhm.
you, isn't it?
Mhm.
Similar grounds, not like
Mhm.
exactly, but yeah, similar
Sure.
ground. And then you have all these systems in place I
Mhm.
mean, you're a mom, that's why you name them like this, but they actually fit in into the
Yes.
founders world very, very good, because
Yes. Yep.
what's so surprise, like,
Mhm.
understanding what you're going to do, like pre-plan things,
Yep.
your home system to keep everything
Mhm.
organized, your family system so that your
Mhm.
physical and mental health doesn't get toll on your mind, and then your
Right.
work system which organize your whole work in proper sort of like SOP with your SOPs, right?
Yeah.
So this was really, really cool. And then you mentioned about less hustle and more joy, which is amazing.
Mhm.
In my
Mhm.
opinion.
Yes.
Anything
Yeah.
else you wanted to add into this one?
Well, I think it's like you said too, with passion, you have to be passionate about it. So to stay passionate about something after 20 years, I've really dialed in. I'm like, is it really about the purse? For me, it's
Mhm.
really about the individual woman. And so when I believe that when you create, you have joy. Because the first
Mm.
Bible verse actually is in the beginning, God created. I'm like, I bet he chose something he loved to do. And when I've
Yeah,
watched creativity wash over women when they have designed something similar to
yeah.
me telling you about Target, I'm like, oh, they have joy. And so when I create systems, whether I'm doing for my Encourager brand or I create a leather purse or they create something, I watch them have joy. So I'll be passionate every day when I can teach a woman to have more joy in who
Mhm.
she is uniquely made. And so when they're uniquely making their systems for what they think is important to raise their family, I'm like, gosh, I love it. I'm going to keep helping them do that. And when they create
Mm.
something really beautiful where someone compliments them, I'm like, yes, I'm going to do that every time. So the passion for me is always making women feel better about who they already are and just bringing out more of that so they can raise tiny humans like that.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
that's 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 super, super cool. Great. So we're reaching towards the end of our interview. So I've got six quick fire question for you. You know,
Okay.
and answer them as quickly as you can. Are you ready?
Okay. I'm ready.
Great. Cool. What are the top three strategies for women in 2024 to, think or start a new business?
1% it. Just take 1%. You want to write a book, you write one sentence. You want to start a business, you research it. Just 1%. Stop going from here to 6 foot. Just do 1%, just the next 6 inches of your goal. 1%.
Slowly but steadily.
Yes, yes. My next tip would be only 80% it. This will stop our perfectionists and procrastinations. Don't try to do the thing at 100% because you're going to perfect it and you might procrastinate because you don't want to perfect it. Just go to 80% and leave 20% for wiggle. So when you get to that 80% of excellence of whatever the project is, you're like, if I wanted to make it 20% better, what would that be? And then you can take it up there. But just get to the 80% to start. And then my third tip would be what we already talked about. You got to have a ton of joy. Like,
Hmm.
watch it in you. Are you actually joyful while doing this? Not all the time. We know it's not going to happen. But at the end of the day, are you still more energized than exhausted by what you were doing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I think I can relate to that too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
Oh gosh, guys, I have tons of YouTube book reviews. I love books. Okay, if I had to narrow it for me right now, one that's been really resonating is Tim Schrewer's The Secret Society of Success. It's less about being the Rebekah Scott and more about the women in the audience that I serve. And that one was just very relatable to me.
Awesome. I'll put that into my list then.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
Yeah. What's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Oh, the joy. I mean, I'm not going to trade places with anybody that I wouldn't take advice from. So, like, if they're in a rocky situation, but they're super successful, but home and family and everything else is shot, I'm not taking advice from them. And so, I think when you can recognize joy in a founder, they're doing
Hmm.
what they were purposely made to do.
You know what, Rebecca? You're the first person who mentioned joy with an
Really?
answer for this question. So I'm definitely going to note it down because this is something which is
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Everybody
good
say like
marker.
great passion,
Oh,
stubbornness, these things like that. Like the
yeah.
Shark Tank things. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
make me smile with the answer. Thank you. What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
Ooh. I have a habit tracker and I fill it out every night for like, I don't know, 10 years now. And it helps you to create good habits and weed out the ones that you're like, I didn't put an X in that for 30 days. Clearly, I actually don't want that. It's a vanity metric. So I super like habit trackers.
Mhm. Perfect. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
What's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had time?
Oh, oh, guys, I have so many. Oh man, so many. Darn it, I should know this one right off the top of my head. I would like to start figuring out how school districts can solve their own hunger problems by making clubs compete against one another because kids are competitive. So if the football team can raise $86,000 for their football team, why can't they do 10% of that and put it in the food bank for that school district? And then the cheerleaders are like, yeah, well, we gave this much into that. So I think
Mm.
that I would like to start something there to teach kids philanthropy very, very, very early on. And for them to make it like a competitive nature because chances are they're competitive and know that with their sports or activities.
Oh, that's really cool because then kids can compete and learn something good,
And
right?
learn something outside of their own head that just
Yeah.
because they're complaining about their grade, there's a kid who hasn't eaten supper. Like, let's get perspective here.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Oh, well, I'm an open book, so I don't know if there's a lot they don't know. Um, I'm a West River girl, and if you live in South Dakota, it's kind of a thing. You're on the east side of the state or the west side, and it's like a whole like thing. And so I grew up being a resourceful cowgirl.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Great. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story and packing years of building this business and some of the
Yeah.
ups and downs. If people want to check out your product or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do
Yes.
it?
We're really active on Instagram, or you can go to designyourownpurse.com, everyone, or you can go to theencouragerpodcast.com and I can encourage you.
Perfect. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Founders Podcast. I hope you found our conversation with Rebekah insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and stay updated on our future interviews with proven founders and industry experts. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and keep building.